Awesome. Awesome. Woo, what a great day. Welcome everybody to another episode of Just Two Dads. It's Wednesday, November 18th. I think we're going to actually call this Just Three Dads today because I'm so excited to be talking to our special guest. Before we get to him, I just want to say a quick hello to my partner and my partner in power. Oh, I like that, partner in power, Shawn Francis, and my colleague and one of my closest friends in the world, in business, in life, and love. We just, we're both family men who love our families dearly, and we were aligned in our effort in the work that we do in the financial services industry, but aligned in our hearts because of our caring for our family members who have special needs issues, and for this community that I always say, we're members of, not voluntarily, right? We're members of by circumstance, and we were drawn to do something in our work and in everything that we do to support this community. So that's where our podcast comes from. So Shawn, hello, buddy. How you doing?
Hello, and thank you. Appreciate you, and I love this opportunity that we have. I think it's one of the great blessings in life. So thank you.
Yeah, it's great. And so it's unusual, I think, and I think we've heard this. We didn't think it was unusual because we're kind of, we're kind of emotional guys, right? But that the male voice in this conversation is a rarity. I guess that's what we've been told. For us, this is sort of natural. So I'm really excited about today. And before I get to our special guest today, I just want a little shout out. So it's I have 3 children, as I mentioned before we jumped on camera here. My oldest daughter was diagnosed with some learning disabilities and some cognitive issues at the time she was 18 months old, and so she was in IEPs all the way through her education, and we were told by our neurologist all the limitations that she was going to have, and I think that this is poignant for the conversation we're going to have today. We were told, rather than what she could do, we were told immediately all of the things that she wasn't going to be able to do. She wouldn't drive, she wouldn't have her, would never get her driver's license, would probably never live alone, never hold a job. All of these heartbreaking realizations that we got right there, that very first diagnosis at 18 months old. And so looking into the future, it didn't seem to be very rosy and a little bit bleak. And so the reason I'm bringing it up today, besides obvious reasons, this is part of our platform and what we do, but tomorrow she turns 25. And I'm so proud of my daughter, Jordan. Yeah, she's going to be 25 years old. She's living in upstate New York, married, by the way. She has her license and drives a car to her job. She works with the YMCA and actually has now been picked as a teacher's aide for kids in the Amsterdam School District in New York because of her love of children and her love of teaching. And so, and I think it's so poignant that we're going to have this conversation with Konstantine today because, people who deal with challenges, and I think we all have challenges that we all deal with on some level, but our society is really keen on telling you what you can't do with those limitations. And that's right. And Jordan is a perfect example of what you can accomplish. She is all about love, and she is all about making a difference in the world. And I love her dearly, and definitely my heart. And the reason why I even got into this thing is because I think about what other families deal with when it comes to their children, and I'm so proud of my daughter. So with that, because I say pooey on, I'll use that clean word, right? Pooey on a society that tells us what we cannot do. Our special guest today is so excited to have this conversation. Is Konstantine Anthony, who was recently elected to the City Council in Burbank, California, and it's such a huge accomplishment. And it's by the way, to be elected in any public office, I think, is an amazing feat. And as we're seeing with this election, on a national scale, a lot of things come up during that. But to be elected by your peers and by your community is a really significant thing. So Konstantine, that's congratulations to you. Welcome to our show. Again, I think we're going to call it Just Three Dads today because we want to hear your story and want to hear it because you also have a special designation, and I would love to talk to you about that. So share with us, here's my first question is share with us your personal journey, and then maybe you talk about a little bit about your family, if you will. Tell us about you.
Yeah.
And
thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you first of all for having me on the show. I am glad to be one of the 3 dads on the 3 dads.
Thank you.
But yeah, just to point out the historicity of this election, I am the first elected official who happens to be autistic in the United States west of the Mississippi. There have been 3 people elected on the East Coast, and I am the first one in California and any of the West Side states. So it's really important for me to represent, you know, the idea of you can do much more than what your diagnosis tells you can't do. Because you know, like just with your daughter, they told me, no, you can't. This is not something you're supposed to be doing. You'll never do it. This field isn't for you. And we proved them all wrong, and it feels good.
Congratulations! It's a huge feat, by the way. Really, I mean, I know you know, but it's a huge feat for those of us who have children and for those of us who live in this community. And God bless you. That is so fantastic. It was huge congratulations. I can't wait to see where you go with this. So keep going. I'll stop.
Thank you. Well, you know,
it's awesome.
This election, it stemmed from my work in disability rights. That's where I started politically. You know, it was before even I was political. It was just social and community involvement about, you know, people who have special needs and people with disabilities not getting equal access and equal treatment. And so I just started, you know, local community activism. I was going to protests. I was going to, you know, we would like go to conventions where they were, you know, fielding new cures for autism. And we're like, no, this is a joke. Please stop trying to sell, you know, desperate parents on this like hyperbaric chamber pressure cures and bleach solution, all of this stuff. It's just, you know, it's all hoax and hooey. And so it started there, and then it moved into, you know, political activism, you know, asking elected officials to start writing stuff into laws to protect people against this stuff. Mm-hmm. And from there, kind of blossomed into a presidential campaign. I actually worked on the digital media team for Hillary Clinton back in 2016. It was incredible for me because she was the first presidential candidate in history to actually have a disability rights platform. That's incredible. I mean, if you think about it, the ADA was signed in 1990, and no president had run on a platform. You know, they have, you know, economic justice and racial justice and all the, you know, LGBTQ equality and women's rights, all of these things that got put into platforms with presidential candidates over the years. And she was the first one to say, no, we need an entire section on the website and in our policy and on legislation just about disability. And she covered, you know, a wide range of topics. And so me and a bunch of other disability rights advocates were like, okay, we need to go, you know, join the team and get this woman into office. And when that didn't happen, I decided to do what I could locally. So after the 2016 election, I, you know, just researched my local city council and here in Burbank, and lo and behold, they were accepting applications for the city council race back then. And I actually ran in that election was February of 2017. So I campaigned for a bit. Obviously I didn't win then. It was very new, but I kept campaigning. I kept knocking on doors. I kept, you know, getting involved and staying active with the local community and building connections and broadening my network. And lo and behold, here I am 4 years later. And, you know, I won with the most, this is another historicity moment here. I won with the most votes ever of any elected official in the city of Burbank as a council member. Wow. So that's huge. A lot of council members get 5,000 to 6,000 votes, and I'm currently under LA County's count just over 17,000 votes.
Wow.
Now, with that in mind, let me ask you this, because I knew enough to know that this wasn't your first time that you ran. I wasn't sure how many times you ran, and I didn't know how many years passed. And so many times what we discuss here relates to special needs. And special needs is almost like, it's almost not necessarily special. You know, what it is the needs that everybody has, but the difficulty in getting them. And so there's always something to learn from anyone, neurotypical or otherwise, from having obstacles in their path. So tell us, if you will, kind of what you encountered when you decided to run. What you have to do, because you don't just raise your hand and do that one day. What the type of responses were, and what do you think took place? It's obvious what took place in you from year 1 to year 4. But what do you think took place outside of you that you not only broke through in the 4th year, but in a way that obliterates everything that you and other people have done before?
I think the biggest change that happened over the course of those years was the people who got involved, the people who decided to help me, the team surrounding me. So my girlfriend was my campaign manager in 2017 and in this last election, and she learned a lot about me and what works good for me and the things I can and cannot do. And we strove to set up, a calendar and a system and a bunch of things put in place so that I could function day to day during the campaign, the things that worked for me, my specific special needs during the campaign. And, the rest of our team was also aware of that. They knew that I, excelled at some stuff and could literally not do other things. And so we, set about assigning those tasks around. And it was basically a team effort. So much so that, 2 days after the election, I asked her to marry me, and she did say yes.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. Holy cow.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
That's
now,
amazing.
If it isn't too intrusive, because we didn't talk about the prior, let me know, because I just thought of something as you mentioned what you can and can't do. Again, that's something that speaks to anybody's journey, neurotypical or otherwise, which is everyone should have a team around them. Everyone should know what they're strong in and have people that balance those weaknesses out in areas of anybody's life. And just, bring on personal development, whether you're talking about your faith, family, your fitness, or your finances. People should be in your corner that support those things. So if you can tell us a little bit about some of the things, if you don't mind, that are in fact challenges, or that you kind of needed to concede to other people. And then before you do that, if you can let us know, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
Well, I'll answer that in reverse order. So the first inkling of getting a diagnosis for me was in 2008. And, I had gone through a bunch of misdiagnoses when I was a kid through school. And, you'll find this if you talk to any people in autism diagnoses and autism rights. Boys, when they're younger, they get a lot more leeway to just, horseplay and not pay attention. And boys will be boys kind of thing.
For sure.
And so, me not being able to do the regular day-to-day work was just chalked up to, he's rambunctious and he can't pay attention. They tried to diagnose me with ADD and tried to put me on Ritalin, and my mom was like, no, he doesn't need that. So that was good.
Good for her.
But this was back in the 80s. Diagnoses have come a long way since then. And so for me, I basically learned how to mask my symptoms, which is a common thing that you find adults with autism who have to deal with that. They learned to mask when they were younger, so they didn't get a diagnosis. And now in their 20s and 30s and 40s, they're like, oh my gosh, these are where all my problems are coming from. It's because I'm pretending to be someone that I'm not. And so I did a lot of that soul searching in my 20s. And work through the diagnosis and got to where I am now, where I accept the things that I can and can't do with help from the understanding of the diagnosis. Knowing that I'm autistic helped me in so many more ways than any of the therapies or situations with counselors. Like, none of that really worked until I got to an age where I said, oh, that's my deal. I can talk to other people who have this and say, I'm doing that because of this, not because of why X, Y, and Z people told me. You know, I'm not lazy, I'm not stupid, I'm not, you know, rambunctious to the point of not paying attention. It's a totally different thing. And that not just gave me peace of mind and a better understanding of myself, it calmed me in a way that I've never felt at peace before that. I would, you know, stay up late at night and question my motives and why didn't I get this job, or why didn't she go out with me, things like that. And now it's just like, okay, I know who I am now, and I can move forward with that. And when people talk to me and, you know, get to know me better, I can explain, okay, I do certain things because of this, and I do certain things because of that. What do you need from me to change or to adapt, or what you know things can I do to modify our interaction so that my behavior is easier to integrate with, you know, all those little things that if I didn't have a diagnosis, I wouldn't know where I was coming from. And it's just helped me so
and so what age were you? I know it was about 12 years ago. How
2008, I would have been 27.
Wow, 27 years old.
I'm 39 now.
Amazing.
And it took me a while. Like those first couple of years, I didn't accept it. I'm like, no, there's no way. That's impossible. Like, you know, because I grew up with the idea that, you know, autism was Rain Man and Rain Man was autism, right?
Right.
You know, we grew up in that very narrow idea of what a diagnosis is. And now we know about the spectrum. We know that it manifests in very different ways for very different people. And so, you know, accepting that in myself and understanding that, you know, it is part of me. And, you know, when my son was born and then he was diagnosed at 18 months, that was like cemented, you know, it's like, okay, I definitely have it. Because even up to that point, I was still like, there was a little bit of doubt of like, no, maybe I don't have it.
He was 18 months?
At 18 months, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty early too.
It was pretty early, and we watched him like a hawk because I was so, you know, concerned that he would get it from me. And so I was just on top of it. I'm like, what about this? What about that? What's his behavior? What's going on here? So we took him in, and, you know, he had very, very clear presentation. And so we got, you know, intervention really early on, and he's been doing fantastic. He got so much more help at a young age than I ever got at that age, and he's doing much better than I was at his age now. You know, he's 8 and he's doing better in school than I did. I was doing at 8 years old.
Wow, that's funny.
So that's good.
And so to Shawn's other question, then, like the limitations that you've noticed in your day, because again, I think to Shawn's point, like we have a bunch of professionals who don't know how to do time management, and they're neurotypical, right? So like we already know there's some limitations that people generally have, but you said that you were able to identify them and then excel in those areas where you needed a support. So talk about that a little bit, because I think that that's a fascinating thing. Again, it covers so many different people here.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a funny thing. I fall into that category where I can't feel the difference of magnitudes. Like, you know, if something is, you know, 1,000 feet away or 100 feet away, I really can't guess that number. And that falls into time management. I don't know if an hour has passed or 5 hours have passed or 20 minutes have passed. Like, I can't do that. And so, you know, setting up a calendar, setting up alarms on my phone. Like, my phone has been the saving grace of my life. This, you know, the technology that we have at our fingertips, I just have to remember to put it in my phone. Like, that's the problem.
Yeah, that'd be a problem.
I'm like, why can't the phone just read my thoughts? Just know what to do.
It's coming.
I will say that there are, like, if you send a Gmail with like a Google Meet, it'll like send it to my Google Calendar without me having to worry about it. So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
So I appreciate that.
That's very cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's little stuff like that. It's like weighing the importance of something. Like, if something is vitally important and something is like, nah, you can shrug it off. My brain sees them as the same thing. And so sometimes I'll do stuff that's not very important, and forget to do the really important thing. And it's just, it's a crapshoot at that point. It's roll of the dice of which one I'll end up doing. And so I have to earmark it and say, no, this one I have to do first and put it in order of operations and that kind of thing. And it's little stuff like that. And it's all day, that's 24/7. That's just the way my brain works. And so for me, especially getting to this point, I'm 39, I'll be 40 in January, knowing that there are certain things in my life that have to take precedence and have to be important, and date and times that I can't miss. I've put in all of these safeguards, so to speak, to make sure I get there. I'm not perfect. I still miss some stuff. I'm only human.
And then you have staff, I'm assuming, people that help you with the time management and that you.
Well, during the campaign, my girlfriend, now fiance, was basically, my full-time campaign manager and did a lot of unpaid work. So she is a godsend. And, this election is as much her win as me just sitting there and going through the motions and yes, I'm here. Because in reality, the actual job is 4 years of legislating and, building consensus and writing laws. The 6 months of a campaign is a completely different skill set. That's a lot of people don't understand that in politics.
Right.
Being a politician and running for office, two totally different set of skills that you need. Sure. And only people, sometimes people are really good at one and not great at the other. And you have these brilliant politicians who will never get into office. And then on the other coin, you have great people who run all the time and win all these seats and can't do a damn thing when they get the seat. Yeah. So for me, I've focused a lot of my skills and my technique and my hard work at becoming good at legislating, understanding the law, knowing how municipal governments work and how you can work with county and state and federal officials and building consensus and getting advocacy groups together to push for laws. But the running of a campaign, it's such a beast to do. But I was lucky enough to get a consultant who had just come off a win in Glendale, and he joined our team and said, look, this is my expertise. You're good at, what you do. I'm good at what I do. Just follow my game plan. And that's what I did for 6 months. My girlfriend and I basically just did everything that he set out. He said, you hit this mark, you hit this mark, you hit this mark, show up to this, do this, and you got it. And it is so invaluable to get a professional who knows what they're doing with experience, with qualified experience, like winning experience. A successful professional is worth every penny, and it gets you to where you need to be to do the things you need to do. Because I would have never been able, to be able to get to the office and do the good things I want, I have to do the work of getting elected. And it was very worthwhile. And I know in your industry, having a professional who knows what the hell they're doing, it saves people money and it protects them in the long term. So yeah, I cannot emphasize that enough.
Wow. Tell us what are some of the things that you've had on, or I'm assuming you had a wish list, if you had one, to, where, when I get in there, this is what I'm going to make change with. This is what I'm focused on. So you're talking about priorities. I'm sure there's some things that are important to you just because of passion, in addition to a need that you see the special needs community needing. What are some of those things and any kind of plans that you can reveal to implement them and get them done?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, all of the plans I had went out the window with COVID. So that's changed everything.
Oh yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like all of us. Yeah.
Once, we do that recovery and the vaccines in place, we can get back to the business of, helping people where they need it. My number one issue through all of my work it stems from disability rights, and then it moves on to other minority groups and people in need. But if you as a legislator start with, people with disabilities, it permeates to every single legislative piece of issue, because there's not a group out there or a subsection of the population in need that isn't amplified by having a disability.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I've had a hard time holding down jobs over the years. You know, I can get a job, I can keep a job for a while, but invariably I always come up against my limitations. And so I've been homeless 3 times in my life over the course of my lifespan. And I've really learned how to deal with that and how to come out of it, because now, you know, by the 3rd time, it's you're an old hat and it's expected, which is a weird thing to say. And even as, you know, I'm elected to office, I'm well known, I have a stable job, I have an apartment, and I'm getting married, there's still no guarantee that in the future I won't become homeless again, because I live with this diagnosis my entire life. So coming from that standpoint, one of my major advocacy programs is helping the homeless. In LA County, I don't know how many of your viewers live outside of LA County, but we have a real big problem here. It stems from the housing crisis. That's issue number 1. There's just not enough affordable housing for people to live, so they get priced out and they end up on the streets. But also at the state level, we have a real problem helping people with mental illness and neurological issues. My great uncle was Nick Petrus, and he actually wrote the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act in the state of California, 1967.
Wow.
And one of his great regrets, there's an interview with him, I believe in 1991, and they asked him, they said, hey, how do you feel about the LPS Act now that it's been in place for so many years? And he said his one great regret was he didn't write the law with specific enough language, because what he's seen, he saw it even in 1991, is that nefarious entities are eroding those protections, and they're finding ways of just letting people fall through the cracks because the law didn't specifically say we had to do X, Y, and Z. What I'm trying to do at the city level is pick up those pieces and try to put them together and create a safety net for the folks who do fall through the cracks. You know, here in Burbank, we don't have a homeless shelter. Like, we're one of the last cities in LA County that doesn't have a shelter at all. Wow. We used to have a winter shelter for a couple years after the economic collapse of 2008, and that went away after I think like 3 years. And even today, we have a facility, the Burbank Temporary Aid Center, which, you know, it's a pantry, food, change of clothes, a hot shower.
And stuff.
We've cut the number of hours that's open. We've cut the number of days that you can actually get a shower. It used to be 5 days a week, and it's down to 3. And the hours of operation are just very limited. And one of the things I tell people all the time is homelessness is 24/7. Right. We need to be able to help people at any time. And it's little stuff like that where there's, you know, there's Measure H funding, which is through the county. And the county says, we have all this money for homelessness. All you have to do as a city is write a concrete plan to address it. And yet our city is still hemming and hawing of, well, do we want a shelter? Do we open up the hours? And you have folks who, you know, are still living in this, you know, 1980s kind of world where, oh, you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and the 1 or 2 homeless people on my block, they're choosing to be homeless, or they're mentally ill, or they're on drugs. There's nothing you can do. So why should we go out of our way and spend all this time for helping these people? And I'm trying to explain to them, it's like, there's a lot more people that are homeless today than when you were growing up. And most of them, if not everyone on your block that is homeless in the parks and under the freeway, they're from Burbank. And that's true for almost every city across the state. People think that they're coming from somewhere else. Like, there's this great swath of homeless people living out in the middle of nowhere, and they're just picking random cities and getting on buses and saying, oh, we're going to be homeless in Burbank now.
Right. I've always wondered about that.
Yeah, it's a place. It's out by Palm Springs. They grow them out there. No, but it's not. It's not a thing. That's not a thing. Yeah. People don't choose to be homeless at a random city, 9 out of 10 people who are homeless in the United States lived in are homeless in the city in which they had the most recent address.
I've never known that, and I've often wondered, because I've wondered actually if people that are homeless in other parts of the country that have much more inclement weather, does anybody decide to come out here? And I've never heard anything to the contrary or to verify that. So that's very, very telling.
Well, it just, I mean, just by the logic of it, if that were true, then homeless people would always travel south for the winter,
Right.
and they don't do that. The number of homeless doesn't change based on the weather. There's no migratory patterns. And in fact, it's just a simple, mental exercise. Think about this. Like, think about where you live now and how long you've lived there.
Right.
You know all the shops, you know all the restaurants, you know where the good deals are, you know the alleys and streetways. It's a safe, comfortable place. If you lost your job or your house burned down or you get kicked out for whatever reason, there's nowhere else to go, you don't have family or something like that. What purpose would it serve for you to leave the neighborhood you're most familiar with? Right. You're just gonna try to stay local. And I've been homeless 3 times, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't think about it. I didn't, pull out a map and go, all right, where's the best place for me to be homeless at? Who's got the goods? Who's got the good homeless places? Because there aren't. That's the thing.
Right.
People, they don't. The services that are out there aren't that great. It's a shelter bed, a hot meal, a change of clothes. Most places can do that, and we are just really trying to get that level up to getting people off the streets, getting them medication, getting them addiction treatment, getting them job rehabilitation, connecting them with their family members. Maybe they just need like an SSI check or a disability payment check, and that's enough money for them to get a small apartment. There's so many things that you can do if you actually decide to start helping people.
Well, it's funny. I have I've been talking about this because I now live in downtown Los Angeles. So the homeless situation in downtown Los Angeles, like in most big cities, has really gotten out of control. And I'm familiar. My older brother lives in Austin, Texas. And Austin, Texas has a phenomenal plan. By the way, I will send this to you, Konstantine, because it is the plan that the county's looking for. They have taken an area of land that was not used for commercial or residential, and they created this thing called Community First Village, where it's a bunch of small, tiny homes, and homeless people can transition to that. And it's a communal effort where they all participate in the growth of the community. It is a phenomenal, it's led by a pastor who had a nonprofit called Mobile Loaves and Fishes, a gentleman named Alan Graham. And I have been so blown away by what he's done for that community. And in fact, they started with 21 acres and they just expanded to like 54 acres of land in Austin, Texas, where there's an empowerment around that community. And it is a phenomenal plan. And I said to him, Alan, how do we get this in Los Angeles? And his comment was, where there's a will, there's a way. We just have to find the will. If the county actually can provide for that, he has a phenomenal plan. I'm going to send it to you when we're done here. Community First Village in Austin, Texas. It is a phenomenal model that I would love to see you utilize in every city. But I think that's great. Yeah. And you're right. A lot of folks who are on the streets also have an element of mental challenges, if you will, and oftentimes special needs issues and other things that come up, and there's nobody servicing that community in such a way beyond a hot meal and a hot shower, which is valuable, but beyond those kinds of services, and we need to find ways to help rectify that situation. So I am blessed that you and feel blessed and honored that you are on the city council in Burbank to see that we can make some changes. So I think that's phenomenal. And in Burbank, just for those who don't know, who watch this we have viewers all over the place. But Burbank is I would say from a revenue standpoint, probably a pretty significant city in Southern California. We are home to the Disney company and the Burbank Airport and a lot of Nickelodeon, a lot of entertainment companies in the beautiful downtown Burbank, right? That used to be NBC, right? But Universal, I don't know, is it all considered still Burbank to some degree?
Universal City.
Universal City, right, that's true.
Yeah,
but other entertainment companies, that are, yeah, Warner Brothers, of course, Warner Brothers here. So significant entertainment revenues driven in the city of Burbank. That's a significant budget, a city budget, that I'm sure that you and your colleagues are responsible for. Yeah.
Yeah, just to give people an idea. So Burbank is only 17 square miles, and the resident population is only 104,000 people. So it's not that big of a city. It's pretty, it's big as rural cities go, but it's a pretty standard suburban sized city. But our annual city budget is $700 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it is a huge economic center.
Yes.
One of the problems in Burbank is that we have a 3-to-1 jobs to housing ratio. There's a lot of good jobs in the city. Like you said, big studios, a lot of healthcare. We have our own hospital here. And in fact, Kaiser has offices here. So, there's some big salaries and a lot of money coming into the city. But we just don't build any housing. So housing here is really expensive because everyone wants to live where they work. And if you've got 3 times as many people wanting to live where one person lives, it's, the price is going to go through the roof. But that's true for a lot of, suburbs of big metropolitan cities. The suburbs of New Yorker and San Francisco, and these are all cities that have basically grown, and they just haven't built any more housing. One of the issues that I see, happening in these big, I call them, liberal blue cities versus, large red states like Austin is in the middle of Texas, and then for another comparison, Salt Lake City in Utah. These, we talk about politics and liberal, conservative, and Democrats and Republicans and whatnot, but really it comes down to the money. These there are places in the country where people have built out the cities and they expand and use the land as needed, and so land stays relatively cheap. Salt Lake City was able to solve their homeless problem because they were able to just buy up land and build small houses and house the homeless. And you can do the same thing in Texas and even in places like Chicago that is not, it's not a deep blue state. It waffles back and forth, but they build a lot of dense housing. We don't do that in Burbank, and most suburbs around big blue liberal cities like that, they just don't build that kind of housing. It's all single family homes with a nice big yard, separated from your neighbor, long driveway. And really all of that space, although it's nice to have and you can play catch with your kid every Saturday, 6 days out of the week, you're just not using it. It's like you're out there watering your lawn every 2 to 3 days, and it's this kind of space that we really shouldn't be coveting. It's like this Rockwellian picturesque dream that we all have, white picket fence and the green grass, but at what cost? And so the land becomes very expensive. And at the end of the day, these cities really need to step up and start utilizing that space. And it doesn't take a lot. I'm not saying bulldoze every neighborhood.
Sure.
Well, we have in Burbank, we have the BTAC, the Burbank Temporary Aid Center, is on a single family home plot. Like it's built in between 2 single family homes, which is kind of funny because that's the only, that's how development happened in Burbank in the 80s and 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
We buy up 1 or 2 more lots next door to it, we can house, any homeless that are needed in the city. But there's like this stigma of, oh, not in my backyard, and oh, you can't just build out wherever you want to go. And it's such a hard hill to climb, and a lot of differing opinions and pushback from the community that it takes a really strong will and a really hard political push to get these things done. And so I'm hoping that all the work I've done over the last 4 years has built that network and coalition to overcome the pushback that we're going to get.
The challenges are definitely ahead of you.
With your knowledge of the fact that people are homeless where they are, they don't travel and that kind of thing, I would imagine you probably, you would think that that's probably well known amongst other city council members. But I would imagine, I remember, I've heard, okay, I've heard
His
somebody
laugh.
say that, I've heard somebody say that Burbank is like a small town in the Midwest in LA. And it really is in a lot of ways. And so because of that, I'm assuming there's probably a mindset. What I'm trying to do is give credit to people on the city council, thinking that they would know what you've just shared, because I would imagine that the typical fear is, if we build places like that, if we build it, they will come, and they must be thinking that. So how does that square with what you've said with regard to people being homeless where they're from, as opposed to traveling, and them knowing that?
Yeah, one of the benefits of having been homeless is that I can speak to it. A lot of the time when we have these study sessions, or there's council reports on homelessness and housing at the city council, you have 5 members of city council who are all either on a pension or living in a home that's been paid off. There's no mortgage. The last time they rented an apartment was 1992. Where there was no housing crisis. And so what these folks are trying to do, and to their credit, they're asking all the right questions. They're trying to get to the point where I've lived, and people like me are very frustrated that they don't already know this answer. And that's not their fault. I'm not saying they willfully ignore this stuff. They're actually doing the work to try to learn it. But until you've done it, until you've hunted through the city and through the neighboring cities for services and looked for places to sleep at night and done the actual work of getting out of not being homeless anymore, you can't push back against people who have these myths in their head. So when people call in or write emails or show up to city council and say, oh, no, you can't do that, because if you build a homeless shelter, then all the homeless people from around the county, they're all going to flock into one area. How does someone who's never experienced homelessness say that's not going to happen? Well, if I'm on city council, I'll look that person right in the eye and say, that's not what I did. And they can't fight that, right? So there's a level of personal experience that I can bring to these conversations that have more clout than fear-mongering and myths do. And I'm hoping that, through those conversations, the other city council members can turn to me and say, well, that's what he's going with, so I'm going to vote with him. And if anyone has a problem, if anyone wants to write me an email, I'm going to send you to Konstantine and he'll talk to you about it. And how are you going to say no to him, who was homeless, and he's telling you this is what homeless people need? So in a way, it gives them a bit of cover, and it creates a larger space for that conversation. And this is the reason why we live in a representative democracy, right? We don't all vote on all the issues. We vote in people who have experienced certain things, so that they can legislate from that livelihood of experience. Representation in government is so very important. I would never seek to, try to write a Black Lives Matter law in Burbank, because of my personal experiences don't equate with that. I'm not going to write women's rights, equality laws. What I'm going to do is reach out to the people who have lived those, either get them to run and get them in office, or at least appoint them to commissions and boards and committees, and have them figure it out and say, okay, you've lived it. What are best practices? And to me, that's a true representative government.
So the fact that you said that, I want to ask you, it's going to lead to the question I want to ask you. And I would just tell you, I was born at Providence St. Joe's. It was only called St. Joseph's Hospital at the time, in Burbank. And I lived in Glendale. So I grew up in Glendale as well, which is the city next door. So I'm so familiar with your space. You're describing your demographic of your residents. I'm like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. But to that point, and I think that it leads to you're an advocate. So first of all, I'd love to have you just chat a little bit about being an in-home advocate for special needs issues, and then what you've done with your son, and as it relates maybe to education, and then encouraging folks to participate in politics. Because my understanding is that's a key thing for you, right? Is to encourage folks to get involved, right? It's one thing for us, easy for us to sit home and complain about something, but another thing to actually be active and be involved, right? So will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So my day job is in-home supportive services for my son. He does need a few hours of work a week. It's funny that I write down, my employer is my son on my paperwork all the time. So
yeah.
IHSS in LA County is their union is SCIU 2015, and actually they endorsed me this year and donated to my campaign. And I know a lot of the members, the higher ups in that organization, because they know I'm pushing not just for local change and to work on a legislative platform for Burbank, but that I have a big wake behind me and I bring people up, and I want other folks who are not very well represented in government, right, to join, to get on boards and commissions, to run for office. One of the things me and my girlfriend that we did early on before the campaign is we talked to folks who we thought should also run, because there were 2 seats available in this election. And we talked to a bunch of people who we felt had a good voice for issues that were not being represented. And we talked to them and said, look, I am the last person in the world who thought he would be running for office. We think you would also be a great candidate for public office. And we did that, dance with a couple of folks, and many of them were disabled. They were women, they were LGBTQ folks, they were, people of color. And for us, it was a big push before the election, because, I wanted to make sure that I could do that even without having been an elected official. I wanted to be able to say, I tried to get someone into office before I even got into office, because it's not just about building a coalition for my own political benefit, it's to get them represented. And now that I'm in office, I'll have an even bigger platform, and the ability to help more, right? Because I'm in a position of power, and I can say, no, I recommend that one, and I'll endorse this person. So for me, having those voices, those eclectic voices, that diverse set of people writing policy, looking at stuff. I mean, there's stuff I miss. Just the other day, I was at the Transportation Commission, and I'm chair of the Transportation Commission here in Burbank, and that was my last meeting. I resigned afterwards, and during the meeting, we were talking about expanding bus services, and a gentleman called in who's a big disability rights guy, and he said, hey, have you considered reaching out with bus services to the deaf and hard of hearing, ASL and Braille and that kind of issue? And I've worked in disability rights a very long time, but I missed it. So it's little stuff like that if you get more voices into the room, you can cover more things. And I'm always a fan of that. I'm always a fan of bringing in people. They always say, you should appoint or elect or give the job to the most qualified person. And I'm like, sometimes there's like 4 or 5 people that are all qualified for the job.
Yeah.
But 1 or 2 of those people have lived experiences that you can't get from the other folks. Sure. And people say, oh, well, that's racist or sexist or whatever it is by picking that one person based on who they are. And I'm like, it's not who they are, it's the life they've led. That's the difference. You don't just want someone in office because of how they identify or what they look like. You want someone in office because of the life they have led by being that person, by having lived through those experiences, the degradation, the dehumanization, the oppression of whatever that person has had to deal with. It changes who you are, and it teaches you to be different and more attuned and more invested, especially in those specific issues. And so, it's another way of getting that representative democracy that we're all really hoping for.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Speaking of
I love that.
Qualifications and things like that, especially through a non-traditional path or route, would you say what role, if any, would you say that your losses leading up to this victorious election have played in your being qualified? I would imagine there's some qualification that comes with that alone. You probably, after losing 3 times, were more qualified than you were when you originally ran. Is that fair to say? And can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So there were 8 people running for 2 seats, and of the 8 candidates, I was the only one who had run in the previous election.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Wow.
yeah, and so having done that work, having gone through it, having lost, understanding what that was like, and in fact, during that election, I was up against 3 incumbents for 3 seats, and that was tough.
Yeah.
So this election was a little different. There was only 1 incumbent, but he was appointed, so he hadn't run in a previous election for over 30 years. So, I had the most experience running, right? Maybe not the most experienced candidate, but the most experience running a political campaign. And having done it wrong the first time, you learn a lot of stuff. You learn, from your mistakes. And I like to tell everyone I never make the same mistake twice. I make a lot of mistakes, let's be honest, but I never make the same mistake twice. And one of the things that we learned from that last campaign that actually worked was running a positive campaign. We ran with positive messaging. After my loss in 2017, I came out of it, I felt like a winner who just came in last place. But from running a positive campaign, by never going negative, by never attacking my opponent, and just running on the messaging of who I am and what I believe in, I was appointed to a commission. I was given a scholarship to a group called Leadership Burbank that does leadership training seminars every year in the city. I'm actually the first city council candidate to ever win office in Burbank who's graduated from Leadership Burbank, and I owe a lot of that to the training I learned from them. Their big thing, they pushed, it's a 9-month training program. You get to learn everything about the city, about the nonprofits, about the businesses, all of it. And their big push is understanding your strengths as a leader and how to build a team of people who can shore up your weaknesses, and how do you interact with them and create a coalition of people that move forward. Because there's no success story of a solo person doing it on their own. That just doesn't exist. That's not right. It's not a thing. Right. You always need a team. There's always somebody helping you out. And they really stress that teamwork. And, to this day, a lot of my friends who were in that graduating class of 2018 are now in very prestigious positions around the city at different nonprofits and different businesses in the government themselves. And I rely on them. I call them up and I say, hey, what about this? What's going on with this policy? Or how do I get this endorsement? And can you help me out with this funding? And can I get a donation from this person? And it was a whole network, and they all, got behind me and supported me because they know who I am, as a team player. And for me, getting into office is going to help everybody. And so that if I hadn't have lost, right, if I didn't lose in 2017, I wouldn't have gotten into that network. I might, if I'd have won in 2017, I might have been a very different legislator. I might have not understood what I was doing. I might have made a lot more mistakes my first year or 2 in office. But as it is now, I take the oath of office on December 14th. I'm gonna hit the ground running. Like, I've been to almost every single council meeting in the last 4 years. I've attended, I've read all the reports, I'm up to date on the budget. Like, I'm gonna be the most experienced first-time council member.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
There's such an invaluable lesson in that. And as you're saying that, I'm rolling it through in my head, thinking about where that can be applied now. And, for me personally, and anybody else that's listening, I hope that that you do the same, because that's what we're about doing here. This isn't like some special needs show. I mean, it happens to center around it, but the truth of the matter is, it's about trying to make people's time on the planet a whole lot more valuable. Because, like I always say when I begin, conversations, look, we're never going to be as young as we were when this conversation began, unless you know some dude with a DeLorean and some jacked up hair.
I've been doing improv for 20 years, and in improv comedy, there's a saying that there are no mistakes, there's only gifts. And
right.
Taking a loss and learning from it is one of the most rewarding experiences that a human being can ever go through. We don't have to be tased like mice to figure out the wrong path in a maze. Like, we can look at what we did and what didn't work, change our behavior, modify our way of thinking, learn new things, and grow. And that's really just what it's about, that internal growth. And how do you become the best version of you the next day, and then the next day after that, and so on.
Yeah, and you'd probably agree that we learn more from defeat than we do from victory anyway, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, because if you win, what are you going to learn? Oh, great, I'm perfect. I don't need to change.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we're coming up on our time now. And I wanted to. It's funny. This is the first time I'm going to just do something here as a somewhat of a tradition, I guess. I didn't run this by Brian, but we're usually on the same page. Something I thought about asking guests, and I think it holds true, with you. I'd love to hear your answer. If you can tell us at least one thing, a belief that you held dear and, for the majority of your life, that has completely been changed as a result of your life experience.
Yeah.
Like something you would do, you'd go to battle with somebody because this is how I feel. Now, you'd be the person that you're battling because your mind is completely changed.
Yeah, actually, I do have a big one. So even before I was diagnosed, long before I understood what autism was, or the autistic lifestyle and all of the advocacy, years ago, I firmly held the belief that vaccines cause autism. I just thought it was fact because of the Wakefield study and all the publications. And I would go to bat. I would fight people and say, no, look, this is what happened to me and when I was a kid and blah blah blah. And and I would pull up papers and just junk, right? This is the infancy of Facebook and the conspiracy YouTube videos and blah blah blah. And when I started to get into the spaces and the disability rights spaces of people who were protesting and fighting and just dealing with ABA and all the negative stuff that comes with that, and the changes happening, there was a huge change in me. I had to look inside and question my beliefs and really change the way I saw things. And it took a while, obviously, and I was resistant to it, as everyone is. But when you sit with people who have gone through it, when you sit with people who have, who grew up in a hippie commune and have never gotten a vaccine, and they are autistic as the day is long, right?
Yeah.
And they try to explain to you, it's like, no, this is part of who we are. It's partially genetic. It's partially de novo mutation. It comes from our natural genetic tendencies, and it's passed primarily through families. It's human nature. It's part of us, just as much as ADHD or any of the other neurological differences. It's neurodiversity. It's a collection of different brains across the human spectrum, and there's nothing wrong, broken, or sad about it. It's just reality. It took a long time, and I now am a neurodiversity fan and an advocate, and I can go toe to toe with anyone on Twitter who believes it anymore. I mean, it's pretty much gone now. The Wakefield study has been debunked, and Lancet has pulled that publication and apologized for it publicly. So it's been a long journey, but And it was never something that I sought out to change. It was because of the spaces I was in and the people I talked to who did not have a voice in the media and in mass public discussions, right? Because these are, people like me, they don't get the spotlight. They don't get time in front of the camera. I'm so enthused that, Greta Thunberg is now world famous. The next generation is accepting these kids for who they are, and they're going to be part of the, international discussion.
Yeah.
Just so excited.
Fascinating.
Wow.
This has been an amazing hour. I have found, Shawn and I talk about this all the time. The last several shows, we've been like, oh my God, I can't believe an hour is up already. Like, we can keep going. I'd love to talk more about this. And we will talk with you, off camera here about doing some additional work with you and wherever we can to support you. But first of all, I just want to say this is an amazing thing. So pleased that you came on this show with us, and what a, you are a light stone, right? You're one of those success stories that when people tell us you can't do something because of X, Y, and Z, you are proof that is not the case in most cases. And as it relates to my daughter, Jordan, before I forget, happy birthday, Jordan. I love you. It makes me feel good. And I think for anybody who feels that their children may be limited by whatever somebody else is telling you, that's not necessarily the case. And so you are living proof that you can do that. And I'm glad that you're on a city council and can make some changes that are going to impact so many people. So thank you so much for being on our show today. And, I always say this is a time more than anything where we need to focus on empathy and love, and you embody that. Congratulations on not only the win in the election, but also your impending nuptials and taking care of your son. And what an amazing story. So thank you so much for being here. And I'll let Shawn love to end our show in the same way. I love this man. So Shawn, please do the honors.
As prepared as I was for a great experience, this far exceeded it, and we want to thank you for being here, Konstantine. Brian, thank you again for the honor, and for those of you that watch us from various parts of the planet, thank you. Robert Moorhead is a frequent viewer. I went to school with Robert. We went to school in first year of high school and in preschool or elementary, actually, in the Virgin Islands. So he's watching all the way from the U.S. Virgin Islands. Checked in with us before we went on to make sure we were going on. And for anybody else that is watching, we can now be found, thanks to your support, on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and as well as our YouTube channel, and a growing number of outlets, at least 5 others that quite frankly, I'm not even familiar with, but that's a great problem to have. And just remember, I want to, first of all, thank the amazing women in my life, which is my fantastic wife, Laura, and my mom. And remember now more than ever that there's somebody someplace that is going through something and needs to know that you care, and needs to know that they can be loved. And we want to thank everyone for their time, and we'll see you guys again next week. So thank you so very much.
Konstantine.